And Rick said he had a dream from God that he classifies an emergency for the United States. Rick was in Moravian Falls, where there's an open heaven, and he had a visitation. Tell me just briefly about the dream, and more important, what it means.
Well, it was a brief dream, and in this dream, I was in a log cabin. And every room in this log cabin was a part of America. You know, all this has prophetic symbolism, but I was taken to the different geographical parts as well as different cultures and industries and places in America. And these little fires kept popping up, and the people leading me around would just go over and stomp them out, and then like not paying any attention to them, and it started really bothering me about these little fires. And finally, we were going to go outside, and outside was a military base in this dream. But as we were going out, another fire, just a little one, shot up over, and I went to stomp it out. And when I got there and stomped it out, I realized that it burned through the floor and the subfloor. So I just looked down under the house to see the foundation, and you know, things happen in a dream that are not meant actually, but I could see the whole foundation. And the whole thing was on fire. It's just hot, burning coals. And this is where the little fires were popping up from. And I knew instantly.
But if you destroy the foundation, you destroy the whole house.
That's what's on fire, the foundations. And I immediately, you know, a fireman, if you ever saw something like that, you run for your life. And that's what I felt in the dream. And in the dream, I wanted to go just 5 steps over to the side and grab my computer, which is where everything I own is in my computer almost. So I was going to grab that. And I heard the voice of the Lord in my dream. He said, "You don't have time for that. Get your wife and get the fire hose." And I knew what he meant. And I woke up at that time, and I was sweating. I knew this house was about to explode that was America.
So it really is an emergency.
It really is an emergency. And usually in dreams and visions, your wife or bride is the church, the bride. And I know she alone has the hose, the fire hose, the water, which represents the Word of God and the truth. The only thing we can do is pour as much water as we can on the foundations.
Well, while the foundation is being destroyed, we don't have anyone speaking a non-compromised message of truth to speak of. I mean, there are exceptions, but to speak of, what we have gone is to more of a seeker-sensitive than a, I hate to say it, but it's true, God-sensitive message.
Well, we're in desperate need of leaders in our country that are not politicians, but leaders. And there can be a huge difference. And we're in desperate need of those who will speak the truth boldly without compromise. And they're going to be far more concerned about what God thinks than what men think. You know, the fear of man brings a snare. We can't worry about what man is going to... I tell you, the political correctness is killing us. It's being used against us.
Well, for instance, General Jerry Boykin, I've heard him speak at your place. Tell me his credentials briefly.
Well, he's probably one of our greatest warriors over the last 30 years. He was one of the founding members of Delta Force. He commanded Delta Force. He's the guy Noriega surrendered to in Panama. He was over the Delta Force, you know, Panama and at Mogadishu in the battle that was made famous in the Black Hawk Down movie. General Boykin was over that, and he's been...
He's a former Green Beret.
He was Green Beret and then Delta Force, which was special operations.
But how does he know so much about Marxism and socialism?
Well, Jerry went on to oversee covert operations at CIA for 3 years. He was our Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence after that, and he was trained as a Green Beret, and when he was coming up in these things, the greatest threat to America was socialism. And they were trained to identify and recognize the encroachment or the insurgency of Marxism at the time. And that's when we got Jerry. You know, I got him to do this little video.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I want you to see just a small segment of this video. It is, he's not a people pleaser. That you'll find out.
We hear a lot about Marxism and socialism, and there are those, particularly in the media, who would say that we should tone down our rhetoric about socialism because we're not moving to socialism. Well, the reality is, I'm a Special Forces officer. I'm a Green Beret, and I've studied Marxist insurgency. It was part of my training. And the things that I know that have been done in every Marxist insurgency are being done in America today. The first thing that has happened when people like Fidel Castro have moved their societies towards Marxism is they've nationalized major sectors of the economy. Folks, that's what the bailouts were, nationalizing major sectors of the economy. The second thing they've done is they've redistributed wealth. We've heard enough about the redistribution of wealth. And in fact, the man that was appointed to handle Medicaid and Medicare after he was seated in the office actually stood up and said publicly that health care was nothing but a redistribution of wealth. The third thing that they do is they discredit their opposition. Now, I've never been so angry with my government as when a Department of Homeland Security memorandum went around to law enforcement all over the country saying that the future threats to America were right-wing Christian groups, pro-life groups, Second Amendment groups, and returning veterans. I'm still angry about that. But it never said Islamic terrorist. That's discrediting the opposition, the very groups that would stand up and protest the things that they see happening in our country. And the final thing that is done in the Marxist model is societies like Cuba, like Venezuela today, like Russia under Stalin, or China under Mao Zedong. Things they have done, the final thing has been actually to develop a constabulary force, a force that can control the population. You say, well, we don't have that. Well, let me remind you that prior to the election, the president stood up and said that if elected, he would have
a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded
as the United States military. For what? Remember, Hitler had the brown shirts, and in the night of the long knives, even Hitler got scared of the brown shirts and killed thousands of them. Well, so you say, are there any signs that that's actually happened? The truth is, yes. If you read the health care legislation, which, by the way, no one in Washington has read, but if you read the health care legislation, it's actually in the health care legislation. There are paragraphs in the health care legislation that talk about the commissioning of officers in time of a national crisis to work directly for the president. It's laying the groundwork for a constabulary force that will control the population in America. You need to understand this is happening in America, and it fits the model that societies have that have been used when societies moved to Marxism.
I Sid Roth here with Rick Joyner, and a pretty sobering program. Rick, there's some serious things going on in the United States of America. From your dream, you saw the foundation all over being attacked. But then you got a call from a friend of yours that's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi that had a dream that was confirmation to you. Explain.
Yeah, it was quite a startling dream. He had it on the evening of October 29th, and he saw this a huge bear. And, you know, to cut right to the chase, it was a bear market that exceeded the 1929. In his dream, it was much larger than the bear that was in 1929, which he also saw in this dream.
Well, 29 was a pretty bad bear market, but
yeah.
This is going to be worse, is what he saw?
That's what he saw. Now, both of these dreams, mine too, with the entire foundation, I don't think the Lord would have said, get your wife. What we had inquired of the Lord, did we start telling people, get out of California? He says, no, not until the Japanese quake. He said, until then, tell them to stay unless they hear from him to leave. Mm-hmm. But he said, after that, tell them to leave unless they hear from him to stay.
Wow.
And so at that earthquake, but Usually the things that he's shown us has taken 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years to happen. Now, I didn't want to say that this probably isn't going to happen for a long time, because I didn't know. The Lord, we never know. It could happen next week. It could be 15 years or so. But some people, you tell them, well, you got 10 or 15 years, they're going to drag their feet.
Right.
When some people need to respond, start moving quickly. I start praying for things like a drought to come upon California, so it would force them out. They would have to start leaving and things like that. And
You've actually advised people to leave California.
yeah, I'm telling them now it's time to get out. Unless you're here to stay, because there is going to be a great harvest, a great revival.
The helpers, the people that are going to
there are
minister
some people
to
who
the
are called to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the safest place we could ever be is in God's will.
Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.